good afternoon or morning, evening, depending on where you're all joining from. I want to welcome you to a topic that's near and dear to many of us, self-marketing. First, I will introduce myself. I'm not going to leave myself a stranger that you have to listen to for the next 30 minutes. Then I'll briefly talk about career advancement, just to set the stage. Next, I'm going to talk about some foundations. These are things most of us are probably already doing to some extent, but they help build the basis for the next step, which is self-marketing. Here, I will not only discuss what it is and how it can help, but also give some pointers along the way. This will all be sprinkled here and there with some of my own experiences to keep things interesting, and also because, well, this is how it worked for me. See, I promised I wouldn't say a stranger. Ready? Here we go. So, my name is Samantha Cowan, but pretty much everybody calls me Sam, unless you're in my family. I took a really random, winding path to get into security. I've been a pharmacy tech, I've refereed soccer, staffed nursing departments, worked emergency dispatch, worked for the Park Service, and in IT. Once I arrived, I started as a security engineer, first at Zenefits, then moving on to CoverHound, where I led security and compliance. From there, I transitioned into a solely compliance role at OneLogin, leading their team. And now I head security compliance with some privacy thrown in at HackerOne. It's been an unusual path, but in security, is there really any normal way to do it? And that right there is why you have to sell your own brand. Before we can get into that, we need to talk about why we're doing all of this. Career advancement. It's something most of us want to do at one point or another. Career advancement and career development are two terms often associated with success at work, but they don't mean exactly the same thing. For a vast majority of us, the overall goal is career advancement. We want to promote or find a new work opportunity. However, in order to accomplish this, career development is a key factor. There are those things we all think about when it comes to career development: learning new skills, attending trainings, also growing at work and taking on new responsibilities and projects. Then you have your big steps: promotions and new job opportunities. These fall under career advancement. But could it be that there's more to it than that? If everyone thinks of these career development aspects that I already mentioned, why are some people getting ahead so much faster than others, especially when they might have less experience? The answer is both simple and surprisingly complex: self-marketing. We all hear about it. We know we're supposed to be doing it. The question is, how? How do we do this magical thing that's supposed to help our careers so much? Well, let me share a few tips with you. First, I'm going to discuss 4 pretty well-known areas that are related to self-marketing, but a necessary base. Then I'm going to dive into the topic itself and share some of what I've learned over the course of my career so far. First, the foundations, because we all have to start somewhere. Networking is that one thing that we're constantly being told we need to do. But why? First, it's all about meeting people, about creating connections in the industry. Expanding your contacts can open doors to new opportunities for business, career advancement, personal growth, or simply new knowledge. Don't forget that many jobs don't even get advertised. Your network can be an excellent source of new perspectives and ideas to help you in your role. Engaging information on challenges, experiences, and goals is a key benefit to networking because it allows you to gain new insights that you may not otherwise have thought of. Being visible and getting noticed is a benefit that's essential in career building. The opportunity to gather new information is an often overlooked benefit, as it's not the most obvious one, but it also offers career progression and development. Discussing common challenges and opportunities opens the door to valuable suggestions and guidance. I can tell you that some of my best contacts have actually been at smaller events, such as workshops or evening panels. These are places where you have time to get to know the people who are there, and there aren't so many people that every face is just a blur. I'm actually still friends with someone I met at my very first workshop at my very first Black Hat, and that was probably 6 years ago. We text all the time still, even though until recently I lived in California, he lived on the East Coast. Then you have mentorship. There are two sides to mentorship. You can have one or more mentors, and then you can also be a mentor to others. Both offers different and sometimes some of the same advantages. One of the things I like to remember is that the person who mentors you and provides you with help and advice might not always be in the same industry. Mentors can be just about anyone. One of my first mentors when I came to work in the tech industry from federal government actually taught me more about startup life than anything to do with security or technology. I was used to, let's just say, a much different way of doing things. For example, we didn't have startup kitchens. We didn't have a work culture that was anywhere remotely near my age. And we didn't have quite such an exuberant way of doing things. One of the first things he taught me, actually, that comes to mind, probably has to do with emails and how to make them more interesting. Also, that including memes was actually kind of expected, particularly when cats were involved. I don't necessarily have anyone that I regularly mentor, but I do have those people I've met and worked with who come to me from time to time when they need advice or guidance. I think the two most common questions people come to me with either have to do with whether or not they should get a specific certification or an advanced degree in security, or just asking about experience with a specific compliance area. Either way, taking on that role is an opportunity to reflect on your own experiences and also allows you to improve your own communication skills. Job specialization is pretty much what it sounds like. It is having a specialty or expertise in a specific area of your industry. For example, I have friends in the security industry who specialize in application security, while others specialize in physical security. You do, of course, also have people who do a bit of everything. You're a security generalist. This is less common the higher you go along the career path, as more in-depth knowledge is generally needed. And it can often be hard to gain that level of expertise in all of the different areas. This even applies to my current team, even though we're in compliance and privacy. I have a small team right now. I have someone who specializes in vendor management. I have someone who specializes in privacy. And then I have someone for ISO and SOC 2. Federal is more of my own area. Everything else we kind of split up and share among the team. The thing is, these are all really common things. Most people know about them and do them either naturally because they just fall into them, or they seek them out. They are the things everyone tells us to do. But if everyone is doing them, how do you set yourself apart? This is where self-marketing is key. These are the above and beyond steps that some do really well, which really helps them to stand out. You don't have to do all of them. It's an area where you certainly can, but you can also pick and choose what works for you. An easy way to start is by volunteering. This is kind of like networking 2.0. There are some really quick and easy ways to get into this. First, do you belong to a professional organization? Maybe one that's in your own area. See about volunteering to help with committees, maybe. I used to manage the publications committee for women in security and privacy, and that was a really good way for me to get involved. Volunteering to help with events is another great option, and there's a huge range of positions. If your company has a booth somewhere and you want to start small to check things out, see if you can go to represent your company and help talk with people who are interested in learning more about it. I've done a lot of this over the years, as I usually join our booth when I'm not out speaking. You can also volunteer with the event itself. This puts you in a position to meet event organizers and a lot of the attendees. Also, depending on the event, if you work enough hours, sometimes you get a discounted entry rate into the event itself. Really, any of these volunteer roles comes with numerous benefits that help with career advancement. It's just a matter of taking that first step and looking for the position. So remember how I mentioned I used to volunteer with Women in Security and Privacy, helping to manage their publications committee? Well, it just so happens that writing and getting your work out there is another great way to market yourself. Probably the most common option for a lot of people is to start their own blog. This gives you control over content, design, posting schedule, the decision of whether or not to bring in guest writers, really basically everything. It requires you to remain current as you need your content to be just that. So you're always up to date on what's happening in the industry. And it establishes a digital footprint very much tied directly to you. Don't have time to do all of this yourself, or worried about whether or not you have enough of your own content to keep it going all the time? There are alternatives to running your own blog. The easiest is probably to be a guest writer on one that's already established. Many people get busy and don't have time to constantly create all of their own content. Plus, some just like having variety. You can find established blogs who are looking for people to submit a one-off or sometimes fairly regular post to supplement their own content. I've done this myself, writing a number of pieces for a Raspberry Pi blog. Another option is to write an article for an online publication. Think online magazine or website. Not a blog, but a place people go for new industry information. This is something like taking your work a step up the ladder. And a final rung on that ladder is to submit it to a journal. These are a little more time consuming as you get to cite sources and you often need peer review. Many of them are research-based. However, they also tend to hold a lot more weight. I can honestly say I have no journal articles on my resume. In fact, it has been a little while since I did any writing. Next, we have that one thing people tend to either love or avoid like the plague: speaking. Clearly, I'm not in the avoidance category. There are a ton of places you can speak. I've presented at high school career fairs. You could definitely do the same thing at a higher education level. You could even speak to a specific class or club, perhaps maybe running a workshop. Professional organizations are a great option. Many bring in speakers for their own meetings, as well as running events and conferences. One of my favorite places to speak are at small networking events. I've done two different kinds of these. One has been more of a networking over coffee, where everyone met and talked for a bit. We had a panel discussion, broke up for a little bit of more networking, and all headed off to our respective workplaces. I've done far more of them that were in the late afternoon as work was wrapping up and many of us had more time to relax and meet people. This format usually worked a bit better as it gave us more time, so there could be more individual speakers and a lot more time to network and actually make a connection with people. Finally, you can speak at conferences. I worked up to this one as writing abstracts was a little bit different to me. Pro tip for all of this: if your company has a marketing communications specialist, that person will be your best friend. They will know the ins and outs of who's looking for speakers, what type of topics they're looking for, and they can get that abstract and bio started and together for you. As for how you should present, you have options here too. I've really only done the first and last one here. I clearly present as an individual speaker, but I've also participated in numerous panels, and they can actually be a lot of fun. If you're putting on workshops, that's a great example of a time when I've seen small group presentations, as you then have multiple people to present and also assist those who are learning from you. It really just comes down to what you're comfortable with and also what works for your specific presentation. Now, let's talk about online presence. I'm going to start out by reminding you that you do get to pick and choose among all of these self-marketing areas. And this is one that is not necessarily my strong suit. However, for those that do it right, it's super useful. As you can see, not only do we spend a ton of time online every day here in the US, an average of almost 8 hours, which I can guarantee you I exceed almost every day. But of that time, almost 3.5 is spent on social media. That I almost never reach, but I can guarantee I have friends that more than make up for it for me. So, how does this information help you? First, you have Twitter, probably one of the most common social media platforms where someone uses their account as either a solely professional or a meld of professional and personal content. As you can see, I'm actually on Twitter. I just don't use it very often. You can, however, find tons of professionals who specialize in InfoSec, privacy, AppSec, hacking. The list is nearly endless. If you go this route, make sure you follow a few quick tips. Make sure you have a good photo and bio. This is how you're introducing yourself to your audience. You want that impression to be a good one. If you created that blog we talked about, or have another personal website or portfolio to share that is relevant to what you're speaking about, link to it here. Use your posts to show off your interests, thoughts, work, and accomplishments. Do you have a speaking engagement coming up? Post about it. Also remember to engage with your audience and retweet the content of other users. Twitter is a community, and you don't want the content you share to be all about yourself. It's definitely a balancing act between your own personal content and, hey, look at this great thing that someone else posted. Next, you have YouTube. This is admittedly where my friends spend basically all of their time. Physics videos, coding tutorials, you name it. I do use YouTube, but I don't have my own content. However, those that do can build a really dedicated following. YouTube is great because it's lasting content. Once you've posted it, unless you remove it, more and more people can find it and recommend it to others. You can also live stream on YouTube if that's something you're looking for. Perhaps live interviews of industry professionals are something that interests you content-wise. You can do that on YouTube. The platform setup is great for sharing a variety of content. If you have a subject that you want to just talk about, you can do more of a speech format or sitting and talking to your audience. But it's also great for a tutorial approach, as you can show video walkthroughs to help your audience learn new skills. Finally, many find it to be one of the best places to grow an audience, as properly using SEO tagging helps more people to find your content. Similar to YouTube, you have Twitch. I will be the first to admit I am rarely a Twitch user. This is included as a recommendation from others. Twitch also allows you to live stream content and share thoughts and tutorials similar to what you could do via YouTube. However, the feedback I've found is that it's often more difficult to grow an audience on Twitch. Additionally, from numerous searches I did find far less content related to information security, coding, privacy, really anything I could quickly think of to try and locate any sort of industry content. So personally, while Twitch is super popular for gaming and entertainment, if I were to go and have to pick between YouTube and Twitch, I would definitely go the YouTube route. I just wanted to make sure that everybody here had information on both options. Finally, there is LinkedIn. This one I definitely do use, although I might post a little more sparingly than I used to. LinkedIn is important for a number of reasons, not the least of which is the audience it reaches. With nearly 740 million members and 55 million registered companies, it's a great place to make an impact. However, while 87% of recruiters regularly use LinkedIn, keep in mind that on average, people are spending less than 20 minutes a month on the platform. So you need to make sure that you're optimizing your profile for the right impact. I know that might sound like an undertaking. And how does one optimize a profile anyway? Really, what all of this is about is having a full and complete profile. I'm including a few key tips on this and the following slides to highlight pieces that people often overlook. Choosing the right profile picture and background photo is one of the first steps. While profile pictures are fairly common, background photos have a tendency to be ignored. Make your headline more than just your job title. Use it to say a bit more about yourself, what you do, and why you're an awesome person. Vertical lines are a great way for a quick topic break, as you do have limited space, and you can see that I use them here in my headline. Turn your summary into your story. Don't just list a bunch of skills. There's a completely separate section for that. This is your most personal piece of content marketing, and it's worth putting some time into. As you can see, my summary talks about some of the type of work I do in my current compliance position, the compliance areas I have familiarity with, things like that. It also talks about the fact that I came to compliance from a background in security engineering, and how that mix of technical and compliance experience is helpful not only to me in the workplace, but also makes me a valuable employee. Share content on your profile. LinkedIn allows you to insert content in a number of different ways. I include a section where I list my speaking engagements, and I've included one of my slide decks uploaded there, including links to a blog, YouTube channel, articles you've written. You can see I have a listing of mine, but none of them are actually linked. I still need to see if I have a copy so I can link to them from Box or Dropbox. These are all things to include in your profile, and they're examples of your work and thought leadership that people can see immediately before they even have to reach out to you. Make use of endorsements and recommendations. Give them, but also request them from people who you know well and would value one from. These are a great tool on LinkedIn. Recommendations are located towards the bottom of your profile, and there's a feature for you to request a recommendation from your contacts. Remember to write a personalized note and include any information you might want them to touch on in their recommendation. It's also important to write recommendations for others. You can find incoming requests down in that same area, or if you have a specific person you want to recommend, you can go to their profile and find recommend under the more button next to message. This is on desktop. I apologize, I did not check mobile. Endorsements are a little bit trickier. People are prompted to give them on random things when they visit your profile, but really your best bet is to pick the items you want endorsements on, say maybe 3 to 5 things, and email some of your contacts who are familiar with your work in that area. Ask them to endorse you in those areas and ask which areas they would like your endorsement on in return. Finally, share content and posts. This is kind of a first step in this area. Respond to comments and move up to sharing long-form content to start discussions. This isn't as time-consuming or daunting as it might sound like at first. You might share a link, share someone else's post, but share something and respond to any comments you receive. Those shorter form content posts help you get engaged and comfortable so that you can share longer posts down the road as you become more engaged in a community on LinkedIn. All right, you've listened to me talk about a lot of things. Let's recap so that we can see what this really all comes down to. First, we talked about career development versus advancement. Development being building your skills and growth in your role, whereas advancement was taking the next bigger step. Our big focus was things today that would help you with career advancement. The first foundational things that help you with this, things that most everyone does, were networking, mentorship, and specialization. They help to start build skills, increase your confidence, and help you meet people in the industry. However, in order to really take it that step further, we talked about how you could use self-marketing through volunteering, writing, being a speaker, and increasing your online presence to really build a name for yourself in the industry. It's this name you're building that makes the difference. It makes you recognizable and makes you known as somebody who's a thought leader. This is why self-marketing is so important, and this is why it's key to advancing your career. So on that note, thank you so very much for your time today. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions you might have, or reach out to me later if it just takes you a little bit of time to come up with the right one.
All right, I will start asking for questions. There was definitely a lot of chatter going on as you were going through there.
I think I stopped sharing. There we go.
Yep. And yeah, somebody was mentioning, you know, they didn't have their MBA listed on some of their profiles because they were worried about it coming off as pretentious, you know, but now they're kind of second guessing that. So a lot of it's interesting, you know, because like in my case, I don't have a college degree. Yeah, I did some college and dropped out and just jumped straight into things, you know. So, you know, I tend to leave education off entirely unless somebody asks about it. So yeah, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm trying to hide the fact that I don't have a degree, whereas other people have the degree and they're hiding that fact.
But
Which I find
actually,
funny from my
like,
perspective.
if you look at my degree, my undergrad is in liberal studies. It has nothing to do with computers. I don't
know about nothing. I mean,
like, all it taught me was how to write a paper and like follow those rules. But if you talk to people in the InfoSec industry, most people come to it either through a degree that's completely outside of the industry or no degree. Like, it's really common. I would say, instead of shying away from like hiding whatever, like, emphasize the different workshops you go to, emphasize the different like running BSides, emphasize the different workshops you teach, you know, things like that. Because I feel like in our industry, it's like one of those weird ones. It's not like one where everything's about how much education you have. It's more about like, it's more about what you do.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, like my job right now, 90% of it is being a compelling writer. And even when I was a pen tester, like 60% of my job was writing up those reports. And you want it to be compelling. You want to convince them, hey, this is important. You should fix this.
Yeah.
You know, and it has to be, you know, you've got to make things readable, you know, especially being concise, I think is really tough. And a lot of what we do does eventually come down to writing, to communicating the issues that we find that we're trying to convince people to fix. So I've been in many situations where on the receiving end, I wish somebody, you know, had some of that writing experience or had some more of it. Let's see, we do have some questions coming in. The first one is around getting a first job in cybersecurity. Somebody coming from a different field with crazy random experiences. I think generally crazy random experiences are a good thing, but what do you think?
I mean, I don't think it's like work experiences or like you don't ever want anybody to do a background check experiences. I'm going to answer it from work experiences.
Okay.
Yeah,
work. They clarified work.
Okay. I would say that's super common in the industry. What a lot of people do, and like the advice that I give to a lot of people, is to make sure that you're looking at the jobs that you're applying for and the things that they're looking for, and pulling out of your experience what meshes with that. So if they're looking for, like, like we were talking about, for so much of this, it's writing skills. If you've done anything where that's in the past, like emphasize how that links, emphasize how organizational skills are important to what they're looking for, emphasize how you helped update antivirus at your office, even though you weren't necessarily in the role, but you helped maintain security systems by ensuring antivirus stayed up to date. Just like pull out those bits and pieces to make sure that you include.
Yeah, it's good. How do you find opportunities to write one-offs or guest writing positions?
So some of it is just, if you have blogs that you follow, you can always try reaching out to those, especially if you see that they do bring in guest writers, you can try reaching out to them. Some of them are also, or a lot of organizations run their own blog, and are looking for people to submit content. So like, I know Women in Security and Privacy is a big one. They actually have that publication committee. So reaching out to them, reaching out to a lot of like the security orgs, they're looking for content. They're trying to get people to get their name out there. So sorry, I've got you on my big monitor. I am looking at you actually.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a matter of where you want to post and what kind of content you want. But the easiest way is to go to an organization and see if they have a blog, or if they have like a newsletter or something like that they send out regularly, and see how to apply for content there. Other than that, it's following blogs. It's reaching out to different organizations to see, like, schools are a good one. It's reaching out to the owners of blogs, especially ones that, like I said, that bring in guest writers.
Right. Yeah, and having worked in marketing for vendors, most digital marketing managers, like if they could, they'd have a blog to post every day. Like they want a constant stream of content coming out. So and there's a ton of security vendors out there with marketing teams that are flush with budget, so you can get paid to write stuff for them. Somebody else made a good comment. ISSA and ISACA journals are always looking for contributions. I know we've got a few in our local community here in Knoxville who have submitted stuff to some of those journals. Let's see. Somebody wants you to describe the art you have hung in the background.
My uncle is an artist in Canada. Let me actually tip this back.
So you've got originals?
So he does woodblock prints. So he carves on wood and then does prints. I actually have the wood blocks.
Oh, okay. Those are really neat.
He got all of this skill in the family.
Yeah, my mom's a fairly, within the art world, she's a fairly famous artist. So same.
Yeah.
She does some amazing stuff. But yeah, it's at least you have some. I can't afford her art, so I've got BSides posters in the background.
I have one of his prints in my living room, but yeah, I lucked out.
Let's see. Here's a good question. Do you believe it would be worthwhile hiring a professional or a company to improve your LinkedIn content and format? And I think you could even go beyond that. Like, I've seen people that have like a website set up to promote themselves. Like, I think there's a lot you could potentially do there.
So if you know somebody who already is really good at LinkedIn, I would maybe go that route first, because I know that people can be kind of expensive. But at the same time, I will say when I was getting out of grad school and looking to change careers and trying to figure out like how to get my LinkedIn in line because it was not a thing in the government, I did exactly that. And that is why I had LinkedIn stuff and LinkedIn tips to share with you guys.
Nice.
Is exactly because I worked with somebody who did that kind of work. It was years ago now, but she went through actually both my resume and my LinkedIn at that time. And now my family all comes to me for their help.
I'm trying to work out this question. Okay, so I think I've got it. Do you find, would you suggest different strategies for different age groups, like based on like folks in, I'm not sure if this is if you are older or younger, or if you're, it probably applies both ways, or if you're applying to a company with older or younger folks. So do you focus on LinkedIn, blogs, stuff like that, or more YouTube and Twitter, that kind of thing?
I think like what I'm looking at, because having gone through this talk, I'm like, I need to spread myself out a little bit. I would probably try to do just that. I would spread it out a bit. I think what you're going to find is that probably your widest audience is going to be on Twitter, but also Twitter's the one that frustrates me the most, because I hate looking at my feed. There's just so much stuff in there. Really, personally, if I were to add another one right now, other than maybe looking to do a little bit more writing, I'd probably look at YouTube, because I feel like that's pretty, like, my dad uses YouTube, my boyfriend uses YouTube, my little sister uses YouTube. I feel like that's pretty universal. Twitch I'm staying away from, like I mentioned. In terms of other things, like if you're applying for jobs and you're trying to figure out how to structure that application or something, I would just do a really solid resume and a really solid LinkedIn. I wouldn't worry about like if the company's younger, if the company's older, anything like that, or in terms of actual age, not like how long the company's been around. I would keep in mind, especially in startup culture, if you are applying for a job and you're maybe on the East Coast and you're going to an interview in California, try and get an idea what the office vibe is, because I have seen a lot of people show up in like three-piece suits in a San Francisco startup.
Right.
And that definitely doesn't blend really well. Like it doesn't really make a weird impression. It just like it stands out. And it's something that when you're trying to remember candidates, people are like, oh, remember the guy in the suit. So these are questions to ask your recruiter, like, hey, what is the dress code like in the office? Hey, what should I plan for in terms of the structure of the interview? So when you get to that point, I would definitely ask questions so you can at least try and feel comfortable in your environment, because that comfort level is going to help you present yourself better.
Definitely. I have a lot of anxiety just naturally, and not even interviewing, but just as a consultant, going to a client site for the first time. I'm trying to pack for the trip, and I have Googled for photos of the office, or if I felt comfortable enough with someone there, I've messaged them and asked them, how do people in the office dress?
Right.
Yeah, because I don't want to be that guy showing up in a suit and everybody's got dogs and they're in flip flops and jorts.
Oh.
Not that I'm going to show up in jorts, but nobody wants that. All right. I think we may have worked through it. I was hoping I wouldn't end this with a comment on jorts, but good Lord, I think I backed myself into that corner. Okay, no, there's one more question. Thank you, Nicholas. Are technical questions common in InfoSec job interviews?
Yes. Yes, they are. They're actually even common in compliance interviews.
And it's interesting, we actually have one of the organizers is doing interviews while the conference is going on. He's jumping off of conference stuff to do some phone interviews, and he's getting technical questions. He just mentioned that.
I would definitely expect technical questions. I also wouldn't be surprised for a lot of companies, even at the startup level, for you to have some sort of test.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I moved into, so Wendy Nather hired me into 451 Research, which is a full-time writing gig, and I had to submit 2 full writing pieces in the style that they published as part of the interview for that job, which I thought was fantastic. And before that, back when I was at Elevon looking to hire a pen tester, we actually set up a box for them to do a pen test on, and we tried to get our applicants, and about half the applicants were like, that's way too much work, and they were gone. And then 2 of them actually did it, and one of them did a fantastic job with it and was the obvious choice for that role.
Yeah.
So I actually like, that kind of stuff. Like, do a work sample for us.
Yep. I mean, I think that's part of why things like posting some of those writing samples and stuff on your LinkedIn makes it so much easier because people can see them right off the bat. But then, and also like if you have a public GitHub or repository or something, you can post a link to that so they can see some of your work right off. But it's not going to get you out of your test. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I've encountered some people like I think the volunteering stuff, that's great advice, and the community stuff. And occasionally you encounter somebody in InfoSec who like their goal is to have 0 footprint online. Like I can't imagine what finding a job would be like in that case, because like I don't know about other people, but a lot of hiring managers, I imagine they're doing some Googling.
Yeah. I definitely thought of that when I was working on this. I'm like, I wonder how those people who don't want an online footprint survive.
I guess you could have like a private portfolio that you can send to people.
That's my guess, is they do something like that. And they're probably the ones that you come across and you have to be connected with them or have it shared before you see really any information.
Mm-hmm.
But I also am betting they don't, like any of us on LinkedIn, get just tons of random messages. Hey, we've got this opening. Would you be interested in talking? I'm like, did you read what I actually do?
Yeah. Security guard position.
Security guard.
Work at Whackin' Hut. Be a mall cop. Yeah, I always hear stories about that happening every now and then.
I get more than a few for prison guard.
Oh, really? I've not gotten that one before. I do have a fake chief marketing officer persona that I created to win some real awards for a fake company, just to see if I could win InfoSec awards if they would actually do due diligence. And he has to date received 4 offers for executive level InfoSec roles at vendors, even though he's not a real person.
Somebody's not checking very well.
No. In fact, like some of them said, oh, I heard from some of my peers that you were great. It's like, no, you didn't. This guy didn't exist until like 3 months ago. So yeah, LinkedIn is a bit of a mixed bag, I think. The comments are still going strong, but I think the questions have stopped. So I think this is a good stopping point here. Excellent talk. I think this will be a great kind of de facto YouTube video to point people to, for this kind of thing. And I love videos like that, that can live on long after the recording is finished, as a good kind of explainer helper, especially as I mentor a lot of folks with whatever spare time I can find. And a lot of these questions you're just answering over and over and over. And it's good to have a resource like this where you can just say, go watch this video, then let me know if you have any follow-up questions.
Yeah. Yeah. I tried to come up with something that was, I don't know, maybe hopefully going to be interesting to more than one or two people.
Yeah, something for everyone. Definitely. Well, I mean, if we're to judge just off the number of comments and chatter that this talk generated, you did just fine.
Excellent. That's good to hear.